Kyle Isbel just made the catch of the year, so let's properly react to it next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can catch us on wherever you get your podcasts. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts. You can also catch us on Odyssey and on YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. If you are a first-time listener and you want to know a little bit more about me and this show, well, I am based here in Kansas City. I work at Sports Radio 810 WHB, do some hosting, co-hosting, and some producing as well. So I stay pretty busy on the day-to-day sports world. But when you come to this podcast, when you click on this link, you know that you are going to get 30 straight minutes of Royals baseball. And usually it is going to be 5 episodes a week. And I believe I promised that in Monday's episode and then completely did not have an episode on Tuesday. So I apologize for that. The rain delay threw a lot off. And by the time the game was over and getting things set up, it just wasn't going to be the right time to do an episode. So I wanted to wait until tonight's game, which was the perfect time to wait to do a podcast because we have so much to talk about. But before we dive into all of what happened tonight, I want to tell you about today's title sponsor in PrizePicks. And of course, Locked On Royals is brought to you today by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. Kyle Isbel is all I have to say to kick off today's show. And I'm pumped up. I'm fired up. Today was a long day. Been having car troubles once again. Had to replace a flat tire. Had to go and get the oil changed. Had a long day at work. Lots of stuff going on. But what I did look forward to was watching the Royals play baseball. I was looking forward to the All-Star starters being announced. I didn't expect any Royals to be starting. I did jump the gun on Twitter, so I apologize for that in saying that, you know, Salvador Perez and Bobby Witt Jr. are going to be named to the All-Star game. I still believe that they are going to be named to the All-Star game, but we're not going to hear until Sunday who the entire roster consists of. So I jumped the gun. I apologize on that. Not going to do that again. I basically just misread the breakdown of having the finalists and then, oh, they're not a starter, but they're going to be in the All-Star game. Not a guarantee, though. But anyways, I'm looking forward to that. Been a long day. And then I'm, of course, looking forward to the Royals game. And yesterday sucked. It was the rain delay. It just, everything about that game felt boring, felt, you know, just like a dark cloud, no pun intended, was just hanging over Kauffman Stadium. There was no juice. There was no energy. There was no life, which is why when the game ended at midnight, I thought, well, when I get this out, it'll be 2 a.m. Everybody's in bed. And who the hell wants to hear about a 4-1 loss or 5-1 loss to the Rays when it took hours and hours on end to complete that game because of the rain delay? It wasn't in the cards for me. But I'll probably make it up to you guys on Saturday doing an episode before I get things started on the weekend. So should have you covered, though, 5 episodes a week. Tonight, though, I'm watching this game. I'm thinking about what I'm going to talk about tonight and what I'm going to dive into. And Maikel Garcia was the big takeaway. I thought for a brief second James McArthur was going to be one of my segment ideas. Then I thought, well, maybe I can tie that into tomorrow's episode if he comes out again. I mean, after a five-out save, I doubt it. But I'm thinking about who the best people to talk about in this podcast would be. And then Kyle Isbel makes the catch of the year. And yes, I am going to call it the catch of the year because there are many reasons why it's the catch of the year. I saw somebody on Twitter respond to me, and it's a very valid argument. Adam Frazier's rob in Detroit. That was a huge moment. That was early in the game. It was still a 1-run game, if I'm not mistaken. I believe that kept the Royals in front by 1. But Adam Frazier making an incredible rob. It would have been a home run. Isbel's wouldn't have been a home run. But I look at the magnitude of the play, which is why I call it the catch of the year. I think the moment, too, of what had been going on outside Kauffman Stadium. Cleveland had lost. Minnesota had lost. Boston had won. So if the Royals lose tonight, they do not have a playoff spot. I get we are 88 games in, and we shouldn't really be saying, oh, well, they have a playoff spot tonight, but not tomorrow, and they lose a couple of games, they're going to be completely out of it. You don't really do that until like game 140, but we scoreboard watch at this point. It's July 3rd, going to be July 4th tomorrow. It's all right to scoreboard watch. We're deep enough into the season where it matters. Anyways, I bring up the magnitude of what's going on inside the stadium, what's going on outside the stadium. If Kyle Isbel doesn't make that catch, right, Taylor Walls is on third base. Tying runs at third base, 1 out. That brings up Isaac Paredes, who is already homered in the game. James MacArthur, he's going for a 5-out save. He's throwing a lot of pitches. His command had been off a bit in the bottom of the 9th inning, despite being really on in the bottom of the 8th when coming in for Chris Stratton. So it did not look favorable at that point. But Isbel just tracked the ball well. He puts his body up just for whatever the pain could be. You know, that's where I was going with it. I mean, he just put his body on the line. Let's call it as it is. He jumps in the air. He doesn't really care what the pain's going to be like. And we've heard so many times Ryan Lefevre say, and, you know, Kyle Isbel being from Fontana, California, that Lefevre played, you know, that high school growing up, and he just would shudder because of how tough those guys were that played in Fontana. Kyle Isbel is one of those guys. He has had the mask on for facial fractures, and yet he's still doing that. He's running into walls. He's getting his face beaten up by the wall. And it's all to make sure that lead stays intact. And that's what I think you can really appreciate about Kyle Isbel. One, being a damn good defender, but B, being able to put your body on the line when it matters. And that's something I believe as fans, we take for granted a lot. A lot of these guys are going through the wear and tear, going through the pain of making sure their team wins the game. Do you think Kyle Isbel felt physically good after he ran into the wall? I'm actually checking on Twitter as we speak right now to see if there is any update on Kyle Isbel, because it looked like he had run off the field pretty quickly. Hopefully, you just don't worry, too much about that, because he's had some injuries this year, but mainly like just collisions and stuff like that. He had the facial fractures. He's got hit in the face. I mean, so many things that happened to Kyle Isbel that are kind of out of his control. I mean, you can say they're in control of not going hard enough for the ball. But tonight, that ball had a 10% catch probability. He covered 103 feet, and that was 28.7 feet per second. He is one of the best defensive center fielders in baseball. And it just so happens now he's experiencing one of the best offensive stretches of his major league career. And I go back to April when Kyle Isbel was struggling. Kyle Isbel was looking like he had many years before. Just nothing to provide you at the bottom of the order. Good defense. A lot of people, though, I think have been waiting for a center fielder to take that spot and run with it, kind of in the way that Lorenzo Cain did. Just great defense, but also damn good in the 3-hole. Like you want your center fielder to be a transformative piece for that lineup. You want them to be a foundational piece. And Kyle Isbel's not that. I think we can all acknowledge it. But this year, for this club to be 48-40, Kyle Isbel had a part in this. Kyle Isbel has had an impact in this. And it's not just been his defense. It has been his offense of late, really since the beginning of June. And even tonight, the Royals were down 1-0. It's Kyle Isbel getting things started offensively. And you hope that he can stay healthy all year long because, folks, he is your center fielder for this team. There is nobody else they're going to go out and get to replace Kyle Isbel. Drew Waters is not replacing Kyle Isbel. And I promise I'm not overreacting to a catch and saying, oh, he's your center fielder of the future. I'm not saying that. I'm saying for this year, he is. Whether you like it or not, Kyle Isbel is this team's center fielder. And tonight, you're probably willing to go to war for him. You're probably willing to go to bat for him because he just put his body on the line to win that game. And if he doesn't catch that ball, I'm still not poo-pooing Kyle Isbel and the effort there. 10% catch probability. You tell me how many center fielders in that ballpark get close to that. I remember the San Diego series. That ball was not really catchable from Nelson Velasquez, but I look at the way the ball was played off the wall. Some guys just aren't going to get there. Some guys aren't going to have an opportunity. Kyle Isbel is one of those guys that is going to have an opportunity. He is going to be in a spot to catch that ball. And if they have somebody else playing center field tonight, they're not catching it. Garrett Hampson's not catching that. Dairon Blanco's not catching that. Hell, I would even say with that brief point in time they put Alex Gordon in center field, Gordo's not catching that. Lorenzo Cain might be the only guy in Gerard Dyson that's catching that ball post-2010. I would say of the defensive wizards out there, maybe Billy Hamilton. I would say because of his speed. I don't know if he'd put his body on the line the way Isbel does, because Isbel is a football running back out there playing center field. He's quick, he's physical, and he's going to put it all out there on the field. Hopefully, I'll try to keep you guys updated, though it sounds dumb because I'm recording this podcast. When it posts, we're likely going to know whether he's healthy or not. So I'm mainly updating for myself whether Kyle Isbel is actually hurt from this play or not. It looked like it was just a bit of a stinger. Looked like he was grabbing his nose, which has been broken from these facial fractures. But what a game, man. What a game to bounce back and now go take a series tomorrow against Tampa Bay on the 4th of July. Alec Marsh going up against Zach Eflin. They would likely be looking at a loss in extra innings if Kyle Isbel doesn't get that and trying to avoid a sweep tomorrow. But that's not the case. Kyle Isbel's the reason tonight and one of the biggest reasons why this team comes away with a Game 2 victory and why they're 48-40 as I make this episode. We'll take our first break of the show. When we come back, why is Maikel Garcia still playing second base? I've got some problems with it. I'm going to vent about it next on Locked On Royals. You are tuning to Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to give a shout out to a couple of the sponsors today, starting with Booking.com. With summer travel heating up, especially for travel in baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you've always secretly wanted to learn about. Yes, we're talking about your division rival cities with hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com. You might just find your perfect stay even in your rival's city. Now, as I said, I'm going to the All-Star game in Arlington. I've already got it taken care of on Booking.com. It was easy to get the hotel that I was looking for close to the stadium, get all squared away with that. They never make you worry about it. From hotels that overlook the stadiums to family-friend resorts, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. this summer. Travel throughout the MLB season. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com, on the site, in the Booking app.com. You also want to know a little bit more here about Game Time. And with Game Time, you're probably thinking about after Kyle Isbel's catch, if you can go to the game tomorrow. You're debating going to the game tomorrow. You want to buy tickets. You want to get there early, see batting practice, get some autographs. Well, if you don't have any plans for 4th of July, you're not going to the lake, you're not going to a pool, you're not having a cookout, or you're waiting to have a cookout at Kauffman Stadium, go to Game Time and buy your tickets today because we got a great deal running for you. I buy all my tickets on Game Time. I'm going to the Kenny Chesney concert on Saturday, bought my tickets on Game Time. So it's so easy to use. They show you the best possible deals. They take care of everything. It's so great and fun to use too with all the bundled deals. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. Again, those terms apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB, LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So we had the enthusiasm of the catch that Kyle Isbel had. Now it's time to get real and more cynical and more critical of a move that Matt Quatraro has done over the last week or so. And I was going to do this episode last night in diving into Maikel Garcia playing second base, Nick Lofton playing third, or CJ Alexander playing third. But again, I said the rain delay threw that off. Didn't want to do an episode at 3 a.m. in the morning because at that point, when you wake up, I'm already done worrying about that game. It's already in the back of my mind. If they would have won, maybe a different story. You would have wanted to wake up and hear about what I had to say, maybe about that game one opening part of the series for the Royals. But the issue I have here, and I think a lot of people from what I've heard on Twitter are sharing this same issue. Maikel Garcia is a Gold Glove player at third, and I understand that offensively he has not been that same type of player over the last week or two. It just feels like this move, unless it was to showcase him a little bit, to either trade or to see if he could play second base because the Royals are looking for a trade partner to find a third baseman. There are guys out there, Luis Rengifo of the Angels. I also think Luis Guillorme can play over there and might be a little bit of a fit if you wanted to go cheaper. There are reasons to play Maikel Garcia at second base. But right now is just not one of them to me, especially when it's costing you some runs and costing you some games. You know, last night, CJ Alexander played a very poor third base. I mean, I don't want to say that the moves or the plays he made were routine or plays he did not make were routine, but they're plays that Maikel Garcia makes. And I think that's what I was gathering online, on social media of, you know, Maikel makes that barehanded play that CJ Alexander did not. Maikel Garcia makes that backhanded play that CJ Alexander did not in one of the final innings of the game. That cost the Royals 2 runs. And I get it. CJ Alexander is a rookie. He's an older rookie, 27 years old, and he's played around the infield. He's played third. He's played first. He played the outfield. He doesn't really shine at one of those positions. So that's where I go, yeah, it's fine to showcase Garcia at second, but right now Garcia is only playing second. You're playing Nick Loftin and CJ Alexander at third base, and when they're costing you runs, look, the Royals aren't 40-48. They're not 15 games below 500. They're in a wild card chase. They're in a division chase. And these type of experiments, these types of showcases shouldn't be happening for a team in a playoff race. And I have been somebody that has praised Matt Quatrero for a lot of moves. And maybe in the end, I'll shut up and I'll go back and call myself out for this segment. If the Royals go out there and trade for a third baseman, if they go out there and trade for Luis Rengifo of the Angels and they can afford him and he plays third and Garcia plays second, okay, I can live with it. Though Rengifo is not a good defender, I'd rather have really good defense on the left side of the infield. But Garcia is playing second base, a position he's played before, but you're throwing Loftin and CJ Alexander over there to lock it down at the hot corner. Loftin tonight makes an error early in the game. It didn't cost Michael Wacha, but it forced him to throw more pitches. It could have cost him. I'm not going to live by the, just because the run didn't go all the way through, or the run didn't score in that frame, doesn't make me excuse the error. It's not no harm, no foul. More pitches were thrown in that inning because of that error. It added more high stress to that inning. And if Maikel Garcia is there, there's no error. And I understand. Tonight, the infield was damp. It was wet. It was going to result in some balls being thrown a little bit wildly, a little bit erratic. But I can't get on board with this decision. It would be one thing if this trade was in place and we would see a new third baseman by now. But if Maikel Garcia is still the second baseman by the end of the All-Star break, if he in the first game after Arlington is playing second base, there's an issue to me. Because that doesn't make too much sense to put Nick Loftin over there, to put CJ Alexander. I know what Matt Quatrero said. But while Nick Loftin's played some third base, we want these guys to be flexible. You hope that when the All-Star break concludes, Michael Massey comes back and he can play second base. Because at that point, Massey can only play one position. Garcia is going to have to go back to third base unless they trade for somebody. And that new player would play third base. It's just not making too much sense to me. It's not moving the needle for me. It's something that I believe is hurting this team defensively. And I don't want to see CJ Alexander over there. I don't believe CJ Alexander is going to be on the roster much longer. Adam Frazier is due to come back. Maybe that makes things easier. Maybe that's why Garcia's played some second base because Frazier's been hurt. Yeah, you could play Garrett Hampson there, but Frazier's been the second base guy when healthy and Massey can't play there. Maybe that's it. And then Garcia goes back to third base. Of course, Garcia has to start hitting to be in the lineup every single day. But defensively, I'd rather take the Gold Glover at third or future Gold Glover at third than moving him to second base, a very low-value position, and putting somebody at third that's not that strong defensively. C.J. Alexander, certainly not. Lofton could get there, but he's a super utility guy for a reason. He's not great at one spot. He's pretty good at multiple spots. Garcia is really good at third, and he probably could be really good at short. But I'll take the defense there right now. If Garcia is not going to be hitting, I don't want to lower his value by playing him at second. I'd rather keep him at third base where he can still be one of the best defensive third basemen in all of baseball. Okay, we're going to take our final break of the show, but before we do that, want to give a shout out to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring in the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you canvas analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. When we come back, let's talk about this outfield production a little bit. Is it sustainable? And do we believe like MJ Melendez is finally turning a corner? We'll dive into that next on Locked On Royals. You are tuning to Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to tell you about our final sponsor and our title sponsor today in PrizePicks, and it is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It's also the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports apps. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the PrizePicks community today. If you're looking for promotions, PrizePicks has got you covered every week, from lowering select players' stat projections on Tuesdays to help your lineup hit or getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. Also, PrizePicks is available in more than 30 states across the country. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks for a deposit match of up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It is that easy. One of the exciting things about this offense is that from time to time, you'll see the ceiling. You'll see the highest potential of this group. And I firmly believe the highest potential of this group includes who's been in it every single day. Not the mixing and matching of you play Frazier one of the days and then Hampson and then Blanco and then Melendez and Renfroe. That's not the ceiling of this offense. The ceiling of this offense includes MJ Melendez in left, Kyle Isbel in center, Hunter Renfroe in right. It would be Pasquantino at first, Massey at second, Bobby Witt Jr. at third, Garcia at third, Perez catching, and then DH would, I guess maybe at that point, be a trade acquisition. Could be a Tommy Pham, could be a Nick Lofton, could be Nelson Velasquez if he starts to hit in Omaha, maybe. The DH spot, again, it can be discussed a little bit more. But as I mentioned with the position players, that's the ceiling. Those are the guys that you want out there. And it's why you also have to stay reserved when you see somebody struggle. I think this year has been a perfect test for Royals fans to see who struggles and see who gets out of that slump. Hunter Renfroe at one point was hitting 140, and I think at one point even down to 130. He didn't hit over 200 until the beginning of that Yankee series in Kansas City a few weeks ago. That was back in June. It's the first time Hunter Renfroe saw his batting average start with a 2. Now you look at Hunter Renfroe and go, he's one of the guys I want up there with runners in scoring position. Kyle Isbel was a guy back in April where you go, it's the same old Kyle Isbel. He's not giving you much at the plate. Now he's a guy since June 1st that's hitting near 300 and has plays like tonight that can save you the game. And then MJ Melendez, a guy I have constantly defended, maybe at times to a fault. But here's where I'm at with MJ Melendez. since June 7th, the 3-run home run he had against Seattle, MJ Melendez has been kind of what he was in the second half. A little bit more power, walk rate's a little bit up, extra base hits, high OPS, WRC plus is moving up, OPS plus is moving up, defense has been good. I got no complaints. In fact, tonight was kind of a continuation of that. MJ Melendez was 3 for 3 last night. Tonight, he leads off his game with a 109-mile-an-hour single. He walks on 4 pitches. The first time the Rays get him out, he hits the ball 112. Yeah, he strikes out tonight, but 1 for 3 with a walk. Not going to complain too much with MJ Melendez because I know where my expectation is now. If he hits 235, 240 the rest of the way, it's good enough. And his outfield production can start to look a lot better because it's keeping those slumps that Garcia has, the slumps that Salvi's had, not as bad. You can mask them a little bit. You know, it can allow those guys to slump for a week or two because you're picking up the slack at the bottom of the order. Before, if those guys weren't hitting, the Royals weren't going to score any runs. And I know the offense has been, very iffy over the last 2 to 3 weeks or so. I still understand that. They've been a little bit hot and cold. But I think there's a big reason why the Royals didn't give up on some of those guys early in the year because they knew that the best version of this team, the best lineup, the best offense included those 3 players, those 3 outfielders, and MJ Melendez, Kyle Isbel, and Hunter Renfroe. That's not to say they shouldn't go out there and add. If they add Tommy Pham to this lineup, which a couple of projection articles have put out there that Tommy Pham would be an intriguing piece for the Royals, you just move Hunter Renfroe to DH, or you rotate Pham and Renfroe and Melendez between the DH spot, and when they're one of those guys is DHing, the other guys are out in the field. It's pretty easy to handle something like that, and it would boost you. It would boost you offensively heading toward the playoffs. So I firmly believe that faith is going to pay off. That 2 weeks ago when I said, well, maybe it's just a good stretch for Hunter Renfroe. Maybe it's just a good stretch for Kyle Isbel or a good stretch for MJ Melendez. I think they can take this into August. I think some of them could take it into September. And they're not going to revert back to what we saw in April or what we saw in May. Because I think the Royals would have seen through that a little bit. I think there were voices in the front office and the clubhouse going, we feel like they're close. We feel like they're about to break through. We feel like they're about to go on a tear to really help this lineup. Because that's the highest ceiling of this team. Having those 3 in there, you'll have the power of Renfroe, you'll have the power of Melendez, and you're going to have the slap hitting, sometimes pop of Kyle Isbel with that Gold Glove defense. That all comes together. You kind of feel like it's a distant memory of wanting a new corner outfield bat. You feel like you can roll with the guys that you have. Maybe you're listening to this and going, that's not where I'm at. I still feel like they should upgrade over MJ Melendez. I still feel like they should upgrade over Hunter Renfroe. I'm not going to fight you on that. I'm just saying what I believe the Royals are thinking. The Royals are likely looking at this and saying, now it's not as dire to go out there and add a bat. And that's a good thing, by the way. It's not being fooled of saying, oh, well, now you don't trade for somebody that bites you in the ass. It's not what I'm saying with that. It makes it easier. Because at the end of the day, one outfield bat was not going to transform the lineup. If those guys never hit, they were not going to go trade for 3 outfielders. And if they brought in Taylor Ward or Tommy Pham, and put them in right field or put them in left field, it wasn't going to make the offense a ton better. It would have been a new bat in the lineup. But the fact now that all 3 of those guys are starting to hit, well, you add one piece now, it only keeps things rolling. It's not asking that one guy to fix everything in your lineup. And that can be the difference from this team sitting there at the end of September wondering what could they have done or should they believe in that guy, and maybe adding that one guy who gets them over the hump and holding on to that wild card spot when it's all said and done. Well, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals in the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson, and you can always find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. One last shout out to Locked On Sports Today. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now, available on the free Fire TV channels app. Tomorrow, going to be a morning episode. It's 4th of July. I'm going to be out there celebrating, getting out into a body of water. So that episode's going to come to you in the morning. Talk a little bit more about Michael Wacha and his importance for this team. And I also do want to dive into Tommy Pham and if he is a fit for this Royals team. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.